They do this in movies, so... You know what? I didn't expect that to last. There's going to be so much just bullshit in this video. Dream SMP is a survival multiplayer Minecraft server started by Dream and George Found. It was originally just a fun place for friends to hang around, but it slowly turned into something bigger. It's currently known as one of the biggest online fan bases because it slowly turned into a geopolitical roleplay server. And with that, I want to state that when I talk about these characters, I'm talking about the characters and not the real people. When I say Wilbur Soot is a war criminal, I don't mean the popular music artist Wilbur Soot. I mean character Wilbur Soot, the president of Lamberg. As far as I'm aware, the real life Wilbur Soot hasn't committed any war crimes. Yet. I will be discussing, obviously, spoilers for the first season of the Dream SMP, and a little bit of season 2. Lamberg, the unfinished symphony. A country created by liberty and freedom. A land that has been through hell and back, building itself back up again after war and loss. The citizens blindly following their president into battle, with the promise of freedom. I believe no other place on the server represents those ideals better than the Lamand tree, a naturally generated tree that has been through everything. It's a symbol of hope. Through all of it, all the forest fires, the explosions, it has survived through everything. The core ideals of Lamberg stood strong, which is why it's an interesting fact that the Lamand tree is fake. It was a sapling placed during Schlatt's administration, which would later become the famous tree. When I say Lamand tree represents Lamberg, I'm not talking about freedom and liberty. I'm talking about how, just like the tree, Lamberg was a lie. We have to go back a bit. We cannot discuss the Dream SMP without discussing the format it's placed in. Our favorite Minecraft YouTubers use a live stream format to stream their different perspectives on this story. This way of creating a narrative is unintentionally brilliant. This narrative is not one protagonist fulfilling their hero's journey. It's multiple unreliable narrators trying to explain their perspective. That's the most important part, unreliable narrators. We as an audience have to understand that there's no one protagonist, no one hero. Every character is morally gray in this sense. So when we introduce the Dream SMP to new people, the first thing you will most likely hear is that you have to watch Wilbur's playlist. Which I do agree, it's the most cohesive and well put together perspective of getting through the first season of the Dream SMP. But it create an interesting dynamic. We as an audience experience the first part of the story exclusively or mostly through Lamberg's perspective. In a narrative sense, Wilbur is put in a position of the mentor to both the characters, but also to the audience. He gets viewed as the moral high ground. He is also kind of the oldest, even though going into ages on this server is a bit of a mess. But Wilbur's the only character to have a canonical age of 40, around 40, depending on where in the story you are. And characters like Tommy and Tubbo are at least younger than him. Mentor characters are the gateway through the narrative. And while they teach the student characters, they also teach the audience. Tommy is usually put into a protagonist role, but again, he doesn't have to be. Wilbur leads the narrative, both as a content creator and as a character. He writes the story, so he also kind of manipulates our suspension of disbelief. The story itself is absurd enough, so we are kind of trained to just accept everything as the truth. When we are told Wilbur fucked a fish, we take that at face value and like, yep, that happened. What happens if an audience is trained to accept every word as canon in a story of unreliable narrators? And what if that gets taken advantage of? I didn't expect to be talking about propaganda in a Minecraft roleplay, but here we are. Propaganda is oftentimes associated with political affairs, like elections. However, propaganda can also be used as hell of a powerful tool in war. A typical tactic in war is to dehumanize and antagonize the opponent. This is used in full force by Lemamberg. Their revolution is fully built on making Dream the bad guy. Dream is a villain, yes, but I would argue that the Lemamberg versus Dream SMP war is a lot less black and white than it's often portrayed. Wilbur instantly jumped on the opportunity to call Dream the villain, claiming to be fighting for freedom. Lemamberg is consistently painted as a noble cause worth fighting for, singing songs of their great nation to instill nationalism. A common war tactic in modern wars is for countries to use mass media as a weapon with systematic government-produced propaganda. Patriotism and nationalism play a big part in these war tactics. Soldiers are way more motivated to fight if they believe in their country. Your armies need something to fight for by giving them inspiration in the form of propaganda. Knowing this, we can apply it to the Dream SMP. A good example of this with Lemamberg was the unity created by the shared uniform. Being part of Lemamberg's army was being a part of a group. It was a manipulative tactic to make people root for them. Funny is a good example of this. He did a lot to try and fit in with the group and be a part of Lemamberg. He even made his own suit because he didn't have one. Other things we can name is the Lemamberg flag, the national anthem. Again, it was very much built to be a thing. I don't know how to explain that, to be a thing. But I do want to say that with the creation of Lemamberg, they also created a hole and a separation between the people that lived in Dream SMP and people that lived in Lemamberg. There was a division. You were a part of the group or you weren't. And they were very specific on who was allowed. Characters like Quackity were very much discriminated against for not being European. Which I feel like we can all understand what that's trying to mirror and why that is wrong. Dream was the one who started the war, but that was only because he was the one who didn't want that divide. He wanted the server to stay together. Also, the president of Lemamberg just kind of took Dream's land and was like, yeah, this is ours now. And Dream decided to fight back. Neither of these sides were fully in the right, but Wilbur was the one that took advantage of the people by setting them up against Dream. This doesn't make Lemamberg a more or less noble cause. It just illustrates that they used a lot of manipulative tactics to get people on their side. One of the more interesting portrayals of propaganda and media, as it's very obvious but also very hidden because it even fools the audience. The narrative hits a breaking point with Wilbur and Tommy getting exiled, and with that, the story shifts to a different side. Because Wilbur is the leading narrative, Pogtopia becomes the main side. Most characters side or follow Pogtopia, again, painting Schlatt as evil because Wilbur said so. I want to get back to how Wilbur filled the mentor role in the first part of the story, because part of the mentor's trope is that the mentor dies so the main character can prove themselves. Wilbur doesn't die, or at least not yet, but he does outgrow the mentor role, and turns this trope around by instead he becomes the antagonist the story needs for the characters to grow. And I could sidetrack on how a lot of characters are basically forced into character tropes only for them to slowly outgrow them throughout the story of the Dream SMP, but that's I'm focusing on one thing here. I could make a different video about that. Maybe I will. The way Pogtopia versus Manberg breaks the narrative is because it's not good versus evil, it's evil versus evil. Schlatt leads the Manberg and is bad. Wilbur kind of leads Pogtopia and is bad. It's not the site that's right, it's the intentions of the people who we root for. And it does kind of mirror Manberg versus Dream SMP, but the way we view that narrative shifts. Wilbur becomes self-aware. He was not in the right, he was not good. His goals of taking back Manberg is fully selfish, and he knows he is the villain. But he also knows he controls the narrative. By Wilbur having that realization, by vocalizing his hidden motivations, he also forces the audience to become self-aware with him. He lied his way through Manberg for power he never truly cared, or at least not in the way that he said he did. It was all just fancy words to win, and he lost. And now we have a country built upon lies, with the narrative leader not at its helm. And with Wilbur deciding he's the bad guy, he also decides that Manberg is better gone. It was never meant to be. And he's right. Manberg was a lie. The original Manberg is gone, not because Schlatt took over, but because Wilbur said so. Even with Wilbur gone, the effects he had on those characters still stay. Like Lemantry, they still hold strong. They hold on to this fake promise of this special place that never existed. I saw someone on Twitter say something which I cannot remember who it was or where it came from, but it was something along the lines of Ghostbird's quote of, "I sowed the seeds of peace, yet I'm the one who pays for war. Hurts more when you know that a live bird was the one that poisoned the ground." And it's true. I think Wilbur screwed over Manberg to the point that even with good intentioned people, the system could never work. So that's why I find it poetic that in the end, Nikki, the person who stuck with Manberg and Wilbur, through everything, trusting them with her life, had to burn Lemantry, to show she doesn't believe it anymore. Because in the end, it was never meant to be.
What?
It was never meant to be.
It was never meant to be.
It was never meant to be.
07 boys. If my audience retention fails, I just pull out this one. Kitty! He's actually staying. This is really cute. No, he doesn't like it. This is upsetting. Okay, I'm going to take a page out of Technoblade's book and ask you to subscribe to me. And also to Technoblade. But yeah, if you enjoy me as a person and want to see more, do subscribe and also follow me on Twitch. It's the same name, Pinkalotje. I stream art. Subscribe.
I can deliver as many cookies and ice cream as you desire once you have voted for Coconut 2020.